There are people who can change your emotional state without ever laying a finger on you. All it takes is one criticism, one careless comment, a message that never comes, a look of contempt, or a word spoken at the wrong moment. And suddenly, someone who knows nothing about your story gets to decide how you'll feel for the rest of the day. Now think about this with me. If a few words have the power to destroy your peace of mind, then who's really in control of your life? You or anyone who happens to cross your path? This is one of the biggest problems of our time. Millions of people believe they're emotionally free, yet they spend their lives reacting to other people's moods, other people's opinions, other people's actions, and other people's expectations. Without even realizing it, little by little, they give away the most valuable thing they have, control over their own minds. And there's something even more dangerous. After living this way for so long, it starts to feel normal. You begin to believe you're just someone who's overly sensitive. You believe you were born that way. You believe you'll always be affected by everything around you. But that isn't sensitivity. It's a lack of mental boundaries. Because mentally strong people are criticized too, they're rejected too. They also face injustice, loss, and disappointment. The difference is that they've learned a skill that completely changes the way they live. They decided that no one else would ever have permission to rule what happens inside them. And once that decision is made, everything changes. People keep talking. The criticism doesn't stop. The problems keep showing up. But they no longer find a mind that's open to every influence. You still listen, but you no longer absorb everything. You still feel, but you're no longer held captive by every emotion. You keep living in the same world, but for the first time, the world stops controlling you. That is the exact inner strength the Stoics developed. They understood that true freedom doesn't begin when the world finally starts treating you the way you'd like it to. It begins when no one else has the power to steal your peace without your permission. And that's exactly the strength you're going to start building today. In this video, I'll show you 7 Stoic principles that work like a true suit of mental armor. Not to turn you into someone cold or indifferent, but so your peace no longer depends on other people, and instead depends on the only thing that's truly under your control, your own mind. So make a commitment to yourself and write just this in the comments: my peace is mine. Because there comes a moment when you have to decide, will you keep allowing anyone to control your emotions, or will you start building a mind that no one will ever be able to dominate? The first psychological principle, the gatekeeper of your peace. Not everything deserves access to your emotional sanctuary, and this is where your real transformation begins. Not when you get better at reacting, but when you learn to choose what isn't even worthy of a reaction. Because not every provocation carries truth, not every criticism carries value, and not every opinion deserves to cross the threshold of your mind. Maturity is not about reacting to everything. It is about wisely choosing what gets in and what stays outside. It is understanding that responding to everything is not a sign of strength. It is a lack of discernment. And many times, silence is the wisest, most powerful response you can give. It is not that you do not know what to say. It is that you have already realized that not everything deserves an answer. Imagine your mind as a sanctuary, a clean, organized, peaceful place where you build your ideas, make decisions, and find clarity. Would you allow just anyone to walk in wearing muddy shoes, dragging dirt across the floor, speaking loudly, showing no respect for the space around them, creating disorder, and leaving a mess wherever they go? Probably not. You would protect that space with intention, with discernment, and with vigilance. Yet that is exactly what happens when you allow every comment, every bitter criticism, every empty opinion to enter your mind without a filter. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that completely changes the way we see this. Your mind will take the shape of the thoughts you allow into it. In other words, it is not the world that determines how you feel. It is what you allow in that shapes your inner state. Every time you react automatically, you open the door. Every time you get caught up in something that adds no value to your life, you allow someone to walk through your mind with muddy shoes. And that is how your peace begins to fade, not all at once, but through small daily compromises, almost invisible yet constant. Learning to filter is not about ignoring reality. It is about protecting your center. It is understanding that your peace is a limited and priceless resource, far too valuable to hand over to someone who cannot even take care of their own mind. Because when you have no standards for what you let in, you inevitably lose control over what you feel. This is one of the greatest forms of self-preservation there is, and once you truly understand it, something changes in a very practical way. You stop reacting on impulse and you start choosing consciously. You stop absorbing everything. You stop letting yourself be invaded and you become selective. From that moment on, your mind is no longer a place where chaos is free to enter. It becomes protected ground where not everything gets in, not everything stays, and most importantly, not everything has the power to affect you. The greatest lesson of this principle is simple. When you control what enters your mind, you do not just protect your peace, you take control of your life. The second psychological principle, the illusion that everything is about you. Not everything is about you. Other people's opinions are their reality, not yours. And understanding that is one of the quietest forms of freedom there is, because you stop carrying a weight that was never yours. Maybe you've been through this before. Someone acts cold toward you, and you automatically blame yourself. A group ignores you, and you immediately start questioning yourself, putting yourself down, asking, "What did I do wrong?" But here's the point that changes everything. The overwhelming majority of people's behavior has absolutely nothing to do with you. It has to do with what they're carrying, with insecurities they haven't resolved, with frustrations they haven't worked through, with pain they can't even explain. But that shows up in the way they treat other people. Empty people provoke. Frustrated people criticize. Insecure people attack, not because you deserve it, but because they don't know how to deal with what they're feeling. Now think about everyday situations. Someone gives you a cold response at work, and you spend hours thinking about it. Someone doesn't show the same level of interest in you, and the very next moment, you begin to doubt your own worth. Someone ignores you once, and you turn it into personal rejection. Do you see the pattern? What comes from the outside becomes something internal. It's as if someone dropped something on your doorstep and you picked it up and carried it into your house. Epictetus used to say that people act according to what they believe to be true, and many times their behavior isn't about you. It's about the way they see the world and about what's still unsettled inside them. When you don't understand this, you become an emotional sponge. You absorb everything, carry everything, and end up living with emotions, tension, and frustration that never even started with you. But when you understand this principle, something changes in a very practical way. You begin to separate things. You stop being an emotional sponge. You observe without internalizing. You listen without absorbing everything. You see without bringing it inside. And that gives you a quiet kind of freedom, because you stop carrying what was never yours. It's like taking off a heavy backpack you've carried for so long that you forgot what it feels like to walk without it. And from that moment on, your life begins to change. Not because people suddenly became better, but because you stop turning their behavior into a reflection of your own worth. When you realize that not everything is about you, you regain something essential. Your peace no longer depends on what other people do. It depends on you again. The third psychological principle, the map of your weaknesses. Pay close attention to this, because here is one of the most uncomfortable and at the same time one of the most liberating truths you'll ever hear. Whatever affects you reveals what still controls you. Nothing hits you hard unless it finds something inside you that was already vulnerable. If criticism tears you apart, maybe it touched the very insecurity you've been trying to hide, even from yourself. If someone's opinion shakes you, maybe there's still a quiet need for approval living inside you. Think about simple everyday situations. Someone questions your work and you spend the rest of the day replaying it in your mind. Someone makes a sarcastic comment and you can't let it go. A look, a judgment, a laugh, one careless remark. And just like that, your entire inner state changes. Now look at it honestly. Was it what happened, or was it the meaning you gave to what happened? Epictetus taught something that very few people truly understand. It isn't events themselves that disturb us, but the judgments we make about them. The problem isn't the criticism. The problem is the interpretation that turns criticism into a threat. The problem isn't someone's opinion. It's the way you connect that opinion to your own worth. That's why two people can hear the exact same thing and react in completely different ways. One brushes it off and moves on. The other falls apart, withdraws, and questions themselves for days. The event is the same. What changes is what's already inside each person. A Stoic embraces every event as an opportunity to grow, a test of their ability to govern their own state of mind. So this week, instead of reacting automatically, start observing. Whenever something hits you hard, don't look outward, look inward. Ask yourself calmly, what exactly did this touch inside me? Because what bothers you most in other people often reveals what you still haven't resolved within yourself. The trigger stops being an attack and becomes a signal that there's something inside you asking for attention, not judgment. Asking for awareness, not reaction. And when you begin using those moments as a tool for self-discovery, what once unsettled you begins to make you stronger. Because you stop fighting the world and start understanding yourself. And in the end, that's the key. What isn't resolved within will always be triggered from without. Sometimes you don't accept a bigger opportunity, even though you know you're capable, and you tell yourself that the time just isn't right. Sometimes you settle for less in a relationship simply because you're afraid of ending up alone, or your mind loses interest halfway through and another project gets left behind. You can look at all of this and think it's about the timing, the circumstances, or the people around you, but it isn't. It's something inside you that's still unsettled, still unresolved, still asking for your attention. And until you see that clearly, your life won't truly change. The world is your greatest mirror, and the stronger you become on the inside, the more your reality begins to reflect the person you're becoming. The fourth psychological principle: equanimity, the unshakable center. You don't lose control all at once. You lose it little by little. You lose it when you raise your voice without even realizing it. You lose it when you get pulled into an argument that never needed to happen. And before you know it, you're no longer in control. Now think about how many times this happens throughout your day. They're small things, but they keep piling up, and each one drains a little more of your energy, shifts your emotional state a little more, throws your mind off balance a little more. By the end of the day, it wasn't one major problem that wore you down. It was a series of small moments where you lost control. And that's exactly why calmness is one of the rarest forms of power. Because it doesn't show up when life is easy. It shows up when everything around you is trying to throw you off balance. Someone confronts you. It could be at work, it could be at home, it could be someone close to you. The tone changes, the energy changes, and suddenly you feel that immediate urge to respond. Your mind speeds up. Your body reacts. You start building your arguments before you've even finished listening. And this is where something happens that most people never notice. In that exact moment, you have two choices. The first is to react the way you've always reacted. The second is to hold on for just 1 second and choose. That single second is where self-control lives. And most people can't hold on to that second. They answer before they think, They speak before they understand. They react before they choose, and afterward they try to fix what has already been said. But someone who has developed true calmness operates differently. That person doesn't lose that second. They create space. They listen until the very end. They notice what's happening inside themselves before acting on the outside. And that completely changes the dynamics of the situation. Because calmness is not slowness, it's precision. It's the ability to refuse to move at the pace of the environment around you. While everything speeds up, you keep your own pace. And that puts you in a completely different position. Seneca said that the person who becomes angry too easily becomes a slave to every provocation. Do you see how profound that is? If anything can throw you off balance, then anything has power over you. But when you remain calm, you break that cycle. You don't surrender, you don't react on autopilot, you don't lose control over your own response, and that is real strength. Now let's look at an even clearer situation. You're in a high-pressure environment. A mistake happens. Someone has to be held accountable, and suddenly the atmosphere changes. In that moment, there are two kinds of people. The first gets caught up in the tension, becomes defensive, starts explaining themselves, tries to prove something, raises their voice, and gets consumed by the need to control the situation. The second observes. They understand the context. They don't rush. They don't jump to conclusions. They don't get swept up in everyone else's emotions. And when they speak with clarity, without excess, without desperation, without any need to prove anything, and that person completely changes the atmosphere. Because calmness isn't just inner protection, it reorganizes what's happening around you. When you stay composed, the environment slows down. When you stay clear-headed, the chaos begins to fade. Calmness has that quiet effect. It doesn't make noise, but it changes everything. And this is where an important distinction appears, the difference between those who truly understand this and those who simply try to apply it. Calmness is not created in moments of pressure. It's built long before they arrive. It's built through the way you deal with small frustrations, in traffic, standing in line when an unexpected problem shows up, when something doesn't go the way you expected. If you lose control in those small situations, you're training your mind to react, and a mind trained to react cannot remain steady when it truly matters. Marcus Aurelius understood this. Even as the most powerful man in Rome, he constantly wrote reminders to himself to keep his mind steady. Not because the world was calm, but because he had decided to be. And that's what changes everything. Because once you develop that kind of calmness, you no longer depend on your surroundings to stay grounded. You bring stability into the environment. You walk into tense situations without absorbing the tension. You deal with difficult people without falling apart. You face problems looking for solutions instead of letting yourself be dragged down by them, and that gives you an extraordinary advantage. While everyone else is reacting, you're thinking. While everyone else is defending themselves, you're understanding. While everyone else is exhausting themselves, you're positioning yourself. From that point on, your results begin to change. Because most people don't fail because they lack ability. They fail because they lack emotional self-control. They fail because they speak at the wrong time. They act on the wrong impulse. They respond in the wrong moment. And small, impulsive decisions, repeated over time, create major consequences. Calmness interrupts that pattern. It gives you time to think, time to choose, time to act with intention. And that time is everything, because it's in that space that you stop living on autopilot and start living with intention. But there's one important detail. Calmness is not the absence of emotion. You still feel, you still notice, you still understand what's happening. The difference is that you don't become a prisoner of it. You are not carried away by what you feel. You observe, you filter, and you decide. And that ability completely changes the way you live, because in the end, it's not the chaos that brings you down, it's the lack of control over how you respond to it. And when that calmness becomes part of who you are, something begins to happen naturally. You stop getting involved in unnecessary conflicts. You stop wearing yourself out over small things. You stop wasting energy where there's no return, and you begin directing that energy toward what truly matters. And over time, that builds something very few people ever manage to build: consistency. Because people who live by reacting are unstable. People who live with calmness endure, and those who endure always overcome those who only react. You can begin developing a calmness that cannot be broken. And when you reach that level, you realize that nothing outside of you has enough power to disrupt what you've built within yourself. And that is what truly makes you unshakable. The fifth psychological principle: the loss of authority. That constant need to justify yourself, to convince everyone, to always have the last word, is not strength, it is a trap. Emotionally strong people already understand this. The person who lives to explain themselves is actually trapped inside the cage of other people's opinions. And it is a dangerous prison, because you cannot see it, yet it limits every decision you make. You begin to measure your words, adjust your behavior, rethink your actions, all to avoid judgment, all to maintain acceptance. Now picture this scene clearly. You are standing with a microphone in your hand, constantly trying to explain your life to an audience that never asked for an explanation in the first place. You find yourself justifying simple decisions, explaining why you changed jobs, why you chose a certain path, why you drifted away from a certain friend. You explain why you did not reply to a text message, why you decided to stay home, why you turned down an invitation, why you changed your mind. Small, everyday decisions that should feel completely natural start turning into things you feel obligated to justify. And the more you explain yourself, the more it feels like you have to keep explaining. Because it is no longer about clarity, it is about acceptance. And while you are talking, trying to be understood, most people are not even listening. Some are distracted, others already decided to disagree before you even finish speaking. And there is an even harsher truth. Some people do not want to understand you. They simply want to fit you into the version of you they have already created in their minds. And no matter how much you explain yourself, you will never fit inside that version. Keeping on talking, keeping on explaining yourself, does not make you stronger. It conditions you. It is like training your mind every single day to depend on external approval. As if every decision you make had to go before an invisible court before it could be considered valid. Approval is never stable. Today you are accepted. Tomorrow you are questioned. Today you are validated. Tomorrow you are criticized. You start out trying to avoid conflict, and you end up reshaping who you are just to fit into other people's expectations. You begin with good intentions, and you end up losing your identity. Remember this well. Not everyone has to understand you. Not everyone has to agree with you. And that does not diminish the value of your decisions in any way. Your peace cannot depend on the approval of people who are not living your life. The person who needs to accept you is you. The Stoics understood this with remarkable clarity. Epictetus taught that the person who depends on external approval will never be free, because they will always be living under someone else's judgment. Freedom is not being understood by everyone. It is not needing to be understood all the time. When you stop trying to convince the world, you begin to stand firmly for yourself. You stop wasting energy trying to prove yourself, and you start using that same energy to build something meaningful. And this is where you truly begin to open the door of the cage, because the person who develops inner strength does not feel the need to explain every step they take. They do not build their life around other people's opinions. They understand that being misunderstood is part of life, that not everyone will agree with them, and that does not change their direction. They do not live trying to appear consistent to everyone else. They live by being consistent with themselves. And that creates a kind of confidence that does not depend on applause and cannot be shaken by criticism. Your mental energy is limited, and every unnecessary explanation is an invisible drain on that energy. It is time, focus, and clarity being spent to defend perceptions that most of the time have already been formed and are not going to change. And while you are busy explaining your life, you stop living your life. In the end, it is not about making other people understand you. It is about no longer feeling the need to justify your right to live the life you have chosen. Because when you put the microphone down and stop explaining your life to everyone, something inside you begins to fall into place. You stop chasing approval, and you begin to stand firm in your own direction. And that is the moment your presence changes. Not because you said more, but because you no longer needed to keep talking all the time. The sixth psychological principle, the code of respect. There is something that most people never realize, yet they feel its effects every single day. The way people treat you is not determined only by who they are, it is determined to a great extent by what you allow. You teach people how to treat you, and that can be uncomfortable to accept. Because it is much easier to look outward and say, that's just how people are. Nobody respects me. Nobody values me. But the truth runs deeper. People test boundaries all the time. Not always consciously, not always with bad intentions, but they do. Through their tone of voice, the way they speak to you, the liberties they take, the space they occupy in your life. And with every test, you respond in some way, and every one of those responses teaches them something. It teaches them what is acceptable. It teaches them how far they can go. It teaches them how you choose to carry yourself. Now think about everyday situations. Someone constantly interrupts you, and you never say anything. Someone keeps asking for your time in ways that cross your boundaries, and you always agree. Someone speaks to you disrespectfully, and you let it slide, just to avoid conflict. None of that seems like a big deal in the moment, but those small allowances slowly build a pattern, and over time, that pattern becomes your reality. People begin treating you the way you allowed them to from the very beginning. And that is where the feeling of being disrespected, undervalued, or taken advantage of begins. Not because people suddenly changed, but because your boundaries were never clear. Boundaries are not about pushing people away. They are about revealing who people really are. Because the people who truly respect you, respect your boundaries. And the people who are only around for their own benefit, convenience, or control become uncomfortable the moment those boundaries appear. That is why so many people avoid setting boundaries, not because they do not know how, but because they are afraid of the reaction. The problem is, there is a high price to pay. You keep the other person, but you lose yourself. The emotional price you pay over the long run is far greater. By the time you finally realize it, you are already living a life where your time, your energy, and your peace are constantly being invaded. The Stoics understood this with remarkable clarity. Epictetus taught that if you do not define the way you want to live, someone else will define it for you. And that applies directly to relationships. If you do not define how you want to be treated, the world will decide for you. And the world does not decide based on your worth, it decides based on your behavior. That is why a clear no carries more weight than 10 yeses spoken out of fear. Because no establishes your position. A yes driven by fear weakens it. When you begin setting boundaries, some people will walk away. But remember this, healthy relationships are not built on constant compromise. They are built on mutual respect, and respect begins the moment you respect yourself. Today, notice where you are saying yes when you should be saying no. Notice where you are giving in because of fear. Notice where you're allowing something that, deep down, makes you uncomfortable. And little by little, begin to change that without aggression, without guilt, without feeling the need to over-explain yourself, simply with clarity, because in the end, the way you carry yourself teaches the world exactly how it will treat you. The seventh psychological principle: absolute stability. Your peace depends on your mind, not on your circumstances. And perhaps the greatest takeaway from this entire video is this: your life, just like mine, will never stop presenting challenges. There will always be difficult people. There will always be unexpected criticism. There will always be something unforeseen that disrupts your plans. And if your peace depends on those things stopping, you will never truly have peace. This is the point that almost no one understands. Most people believe peace comes when everything is going well, when no one criticizes them, when nothing goes wrong, when the day unfolds exactly as planned. But that isn't peace. That's temporary good fortune. Your peace does not depend on your circumstances. It depends on your mind, and that changes everything. Think about a common situation. You wake up feeling good. You start the day being productive, everything is going smoothly. Then you receive some harsh criticism from your boss. It gets into your head, you think about it, replay it, analyze it, and suddenly your entire state of mind changes. The problem wasn't what happened. It wasn't opening that email. It wasn't reading that harsh criticism. The problem was the space you allowed it to take up inside you. Here's another example. You plan out your entire day, organize your tasks, you're focused. Then something unexpected happens. Something slips out of your control. Within minutes, you're no longer present. You're irritated, frustrated, mentally trying to fix something that has already happened. Do you notice the pattern in both situations? It's not the event that throws you off balance, it's the way you respond to it. The Stoics understood this with a level of clarity that very few people truly apply even today. Epictetus taught something simple, yet incredibly powerful. Some things are within our control, and others are not. And when you try to control what isn't yours to control, you wear yourself down. You become frustrated. You waste your energy. But when you bring your attention back to what truly belongs to you, your perception, your interpretation, your response, something changes immediately. You stop fighting reality and you begin operating within it with wisdom. And here's an image that explains everything. Imagine your mind is like a lake. When the lake is rough, even a small stone creates large ripples. Everything seems bigger than it really is. Everything feels more intense, more urgent, heavier than it actually is. But when the lake is calm, the very same stone falls into the water and barely changes anything. The world will keep throwing stones. That doesn't change. What changes is the state of your mind. And that state doesn't come from the outside. It is built from within. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Think about how profound that is. This isn't about eliminating problems. It's about refusing to let problems take control of you. And here's the fundamental difference between ordinary people and those who have developed this level of self-mastery. Ordinary people react. Strong people choose. They react to someone's tone of voice, they react to criticism, they react to delays, they react to frustration. They're like those inflatable punching toys that always bounce right back. Every single thing that hits them demands their attention, and they're constantly being pushed around by their environment. But people who develop this principle create a space between what happens and how they respond. And that space is where real power lives. Because in that space, you decide. You decide whether something deserves your energy. You decide whether it deserves your attention. You decide whether it will affect your inner state. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. But let's be honest, this isn't easy. At first, it isn't natural to ignore something that bothers you. It isn't automatic not to react when someone provokes you. It isn't simple to remain calm when everything seems to be falling apart. But just because it isn't easy doesn't mean it's impossible. It simply means it has to be trained, just like a muscle. In the beginning, every weight feels heavy, every effort leaves you exhausted. But over time, the very things that once knocked you down no longer affect you in the same way. That's exactly how your mind works. Every time you choose not to react impulsively, you strengthen that self-control. Every time you observe before responding, you build greater mastery. Every time you refuse to be carried away by the moment, you build stability. Eventually, you reach a point where the things that once shook you, your boss, not getting a reply to an important message, that arrogant coworker, simply no longer have the same effect. And that's where the feeling that nothing bothers you anymore is born. Not because the world became easier, but because you became steadier. And when that happens, something interesting follows naturally. Everything begins to flow. Not because life suddenly became perfect, but because you stopped creating unnecessary resistance. You stopped fighting everything. You stopped reacting to everything. You stopped being like one of those inflatable punching toys. You stopped draining yourself over every little thing. And that gives you a quiet advantage. While other people are trapped in emotional reactions, you're thinking clearly. While others are wasting energy on small things, you're directing your energy toward what truly matters. While others are being carried by their environment, you're leading yourself. And that changes your results completely, because in the end, what defines your life isn't what happens to you. It's how you respond to what happens. Peace is no longer something you stumble upon by chance. It becomes something you build. It no longer depends on the world. It depends on you. And perhaps that is the most important turning point in this entire video. You don't need a perfect world to live in peace. You need a mind that has been trained not to hand over its center to everything happening outside of it. When you learn that not everything deserves a place in your emotional sanctuary, you begin protecting your peace. When you realize that not everything is about you, you stop carrying burdens that were never yours to carry. When you recognize that whatever affects you reveals what still controls you, you begin to truly know yourself. When you develop equanimity, you stop wasting energy over minor losses of control. When you stop feeling the need to explain yourself all the time, you regain your presence and your dignity. When you establish healthy boundaries, you teach the world to respect what is sacred to you. And then everything begins to fall into place. Not because life became easier, but because you stopped being emotionally available to everything. That is what the Stoics understood. Freedom isn't found in controlling the world. It's found in refusing to let the world control you. Because in the end, living well doesn't mean living without criticism, without difficult people, or without unexpected setbacks. It means living without losing yourself in the middle of them. And when you reach that level, something changes forever. People keep talking. The world keeps applying pressure. Problems keep showing up. But they no longer find the same vulnerability, the same opening, the same access to you. You don't become cold, you become steadfast. You don't become distant, you become whole. You don't become indifferent, you become the sovereign of your own mind. And that is exactly the point where nothing and no one can affect you the way they once did. You are the captain of your own mind. Stand firm, keep moving forward with strength, and continue to thrive. The Stoic house preserves timeless wisdom for those facing modern battles. If this video made you stronger, support the channel by giving it a like, share that strength with someone who needs it, and subscribe so we can continue this journey together. Thank you for watching.